Hey, today we're going to turn to page 58 of our IMB, and we are going to graph a system of linear inequalities. So we got a bunch of steps, and the first one we're going to do is we're going to solve our inequalities for y. So we want them to be in y equals mx plus b, except instead of an equal sign, there will be an inequality sign. So that makes us realize I'm a little bit different on an inequality when I solve for y. What I have to remember is to flip the inequality if we divide or multiply by a negative number. Okay, so step one, solve our inequalities for y so we can find our slope and our y-intercept, but we can't forget that if we do divide or multiply by a negative number, we need to flip our inequality. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check out these two equations and see if they need to be solved for y. And I'll look at both of them, and they both need to be solved for y. So I'm going to start with equation 1, and I have a positive 3x, so I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And then I'm left with negative 4y is less than. I want my x term to come first, so I'm going to bring my negative 3x first, and then my constant, my positive 4, last. Next thing is I just need to divide by negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. But also when I divide by everything by negative 4, I can't forget that I'm in that one case that's different from an inequality, which is when I divide by a negative number. So that bottom number in the denominator is negative. When I write it for the final answer, I'm going to have to flip my inequality. So from less than, it flips to greater than. Negative 3 divided by negative 4 is a positive 3/4, and 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1. Okay. On equation number 2, I'm going to do the same thing. I have a positive x on the left side, so I'm going to subtract it off to cancel it out. And I'm going to have to do the same thing to the right side. So I have 2y is less than or equal to, I want my x to come first, it's a negative x, then my constant, which is a positive 8. Now I'm going to divide everything by 2 because 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then I'm going to write y is less than. I didn't have to worry about flipping this inequality because my 2 was positive. And I noticed that my x, I don't have a visible number in front of it, so I know it's a 1 and it's negative, so it's negative 1. And then I'm dividing that by 2, which is negative 1/2. And I'm going to pull my x out in front just so I can see that slope real good. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, so step 1 by far is probably the hardest step that we have to do. Lots of rearranging and manipulation there. Okay, so we're going to go back up to our steps, and we're going to look at what do we do next. Next is we are going to write down our slope, which is our m's, and y-intercepts, which is our b. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to write those two things out. So my slope is 3/4. I like to put my directions on mine. I know since it's positive, I'm going up 3, and I'm always going right to begin with. My b is my y-intercept, and as a point, the y-intercept is 0 to -1. Second equation, my m is -1 divided by +2. I know my slope is negative, so I'm going to travel down 1, and I'm always going to the right. My B is my y-intercept, which written as a point is 0, 4. Okay, that should be a very familiar step. Okay, my third step is, which is different from an equation, is we are going to place a dotted or solid line through the graph. Let's determine before we graph which is which. So let's look at this first blue equation, equation number 1. And remember, if the inequality doesn't have that solid line underneath it, so it is greater than or less than but not equal to, it's dotted. And on inequality 2, notice that I have that equal to sign, which is a solid line. That's an indication that it's solid. Okay, that's a pretty easy step. So dotted like this, like that, solid. We can add that up there if we wanted to too. Okay, step 4, another easy step. We are going to shade above, which is greater than, or below, which is less than, the lines. Okay, so before I do that, I'm just going to indicate what I'm going to do in both of these scenarios. So on equation number 1, my mouth of my inequality is opening towards the y, so I know that that's greater. So I also know I'm going to shade above. On my second equation, the mouth of the inequality is opening away from the y variable, so it is less, so I'm going to shade below. Okay, and then my last thing is, which is kind of new, is like, where's our solution? We found out when we did equations, it was where they intersected. This is the solution, is where the shading overlaps. Okay, so at the very end, we're going to find the solution by looking at where my two lines shading overlaps each other. Okay, so I'm going to graph both of these lines, but one at a time. Otherwise, it gets to be too much on your page. So I'm going to start with my equation number 1. I have everything written down. Let's start off at -1. I'm going to take my slope, and I see that it says to go up 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. Now I also want to go the reverse direction. So to reverse that, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know that I've already written down that it's going to be a dotted line. So I'm going to dot this line. And now I'm going to shade, and it says above the line, start at the y-intercept, which is -1, and the numbers that are above that are greater than that are 0, 1, 2, so up here. And I just like to lightly shade. You don't have to get out of control. We do want to see where these overlap. Okay. And then the next equation, I'm going to do equation 2. And I'm going to start off at 0, 4. And I'm going to shade down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. Remember, this is the point we cared about if it was an equation, but not so much as an inequality. So down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. Go back up, reverse those directions. So up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2. And I know that it's a solid line. And it says to shade below. Now, as I'm shading below, notice my first equation that's in blue, its solutions were all in that blue shaded area. We talked about that before and we picked points. Now, when I shade below my red line, the second equation, the solution are going to be where these shaded regions agree or overlap. So as I'm shading below, notice as these blue and red shading marks meet up, that is where the XY coordinate points that will work for both equations. That's where those answers lie. So this is my area. Notice as I shade more below this line, it doesn't match up with that blue solution area. So here's my solution. It kind of looks like a cone. And if I picked a value in between this cone shape region, it looks like a sideways opening cone. If I picked any of the points in here, it would cause both of my equations to express true solutions. Okay, so there's a couple practice, and I'll see y'all shortly.